Tom, and welcome to the Mini Sculpting Super Show, episode number 20. Today I have a really great interview for you with a sculptor that's actually relatively new to the industry, but he's doing really great work, and if you didn't know it, I think you'd be hard-pressed to tell that he's only been doing this for about a year. He talks a lot about his experiences and just what he's gone through to get to where he's been, and how he kind of forewent traditional sculpting and went straight into digital. So the interview today is with Tim Hill, and yeah, I think you're really going to like it. But before we get started, I wanted to say a huge thank you to all my patrons for helping support the show, and also to remind you to check out my sponsor, Sculptomo Toys, at sculptomotoys.com. They sell really great action figures, high quality statues from all sorts of companies and stuff like DC, Metal Gear Solid, NECA, really great stuff. And if you use the promo code TMSSS17, just think the Mini Sculpting Super Show 17, you get 10% off your whole order. All right, guys, enjoy the interview. Hey, Tim, welcome to the Mini Sculpting Super Show. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Tom, thanks. It's awesome to be here and do this. There we go.
No problem. Yeah, well, I was really excited. I came across your work rather recently. We'll talk about how that happened in a little bit, but well, actually, I'll do it right now. Yeah, so Tim and I both have know and have done work for the Rodman brothers, Jeff and Ben, at RBJ Game Company, and I got a chance to see some of his work recently, and I'm very excited about it, even more so because of how relatively new you are to all this, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm excited to have you here, because there's so many people that are just starting out, getting into this. They're working traditionally or digitally, and I think you could really help them out with some of your experience.
Yeah, it's been awesome so far. Very fun.
Great. Well, let's just start right off with that. So what drew you into sculpting miniatures? I mean, was it gaming? You just love art? Sculpture?
Yeah, I normally did traditional 2D art. I went and studied that at my local community college. And then after that, I transferred to Full Sail University for computer animation. And so I did all that and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from Full Sail. But the only thing is I did it online. So I wasn't able to make the connections or really do anything. And since I live in Birmingham, Alabama, there's not any real big computer animation scene down here or anywhere close to here. I guess there might be in Atlanta now, but anyway, I haven't been able to really find anything, and but I use ZBrush a ton. And I remember an old high school friend of mine named Dan Jackson. I remember that his dad made miniatures, and I know that he used the same programs that I did. And it was just kind of like sort of luck. He was at this bar with his family on New Year's Eve a couple of years ago to see a band. And I was there as well, and I ran into him, and I was just like, hey, can we talk soon? Can we meet up and have a discussion about a few things? And of course, Bobby's super nice and cool. And he was like, yeah, come on by my office and we'll talk. And then, I just kind of showed him stuff that I had worked on in ZBrush, which was more supposed to be game assets. And I was still even though I've been using the program for about a year and a half, I still had a ton to learn. So yeah, I guess it did come from gaming. And he just kind of told me, he had a sort of trial run. He got me in contact with Ron from Reaper, and they were like, all right, well, we'll give you this piece of concept art, and how about, you try and translate it, and we'll see where we can go from there. And I actually have my first freebie, I guess, that I did for him. It's a resculpt of a guy that they've already had.
Oh, cool.
But this is like my version of it. and they didn't really do anything to it. It was just, or they didn't produce it or anything, but it was just sort
Gotcha.
of
Gotcha.
No.
Just a test.
yeah. And that took me forever. It took me like a month and a half just to get that done.
Yeah, it's slow going at first.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for me was changing my proportions for things, like for weapons, per se, so that they don't break when the wind blows. Learning to thicken up everything, including fingers and ears. And because, doing game assets and stuff, it's just sort of everything's a normal scale. So when you think about, this staff, it's still pretty skinny. I actually could probably thicken it up a whole ton if I was to redo it now. And, but yeah, so that just sort of got me into it. And I'm actually a lot more confident in my art now that I've been doing 3D sculpting. And I mean, I like doing my drawings, but I've always been, I don't want to say a perfectionist because that's what every artist says. It's just, I have these ideas and sometimes I just can't translate it to 2D, but when I'm able to sculpt it and look at something in 3-dimensional space, I can just jot my thoughts down or jot my ideas down way clearer, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What did you just said something that I wanted to touch on? You said a couple things. Yeah, one. Oh, shoot! I was just about to start writing a note down so I wouldn't forget it. So you started out. You're more of an illustrator or a drawer, but then when you went to school, you got into the computer animation, and that's what kind of exposed you to 3D. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to animate in using programs like Maya or Blender and stuff, but then they gave us ZBrush, and I sort of fell in love with that instead. I actually, in the last 5 months, you get to specialize within a program. So, like with computer animation, they were like, okay, well, you can keep down traditional computer animation, character art, rigging, or texturing. And then I went with character art because I enjoyed ZBrush so much and just kind of fooling around in there. So, yeah.
So one of the main things that you just touched on that is super important for everyone to understand. You need to understand it whether you're working traditionally or digitally, but it's a big challenge for digital sculptors. And that's, you talk about getting the proportions right for miniatures. And what I mean by that is, like you said, bulking them up, exaggerating details so that things can cast and the figures won't break. So, we talked a little bit before, and you mentioned that you went straight, and just now, you went straight into digital. You never attempted to do miniatures traditionally. So how was it, the hurdle of getting over that? And more importantly, what are some of the techniques you used to kind of learn that and start to understand how you needed to push the figure farther?
Well, I bought a ton of Reaper stuff, and I got to chat at ReaperCon with Bob Rodolfi and Julie Guthrie, and because they still do traditional, and they were telling me just, that they actually sort of had a problem with that when they first started out, even traditionally. And I mostly always just go to Bobby because he lives in town. He's technically my mentor and has helped me so much get into this.
He's a great mentor to have.
Yeah, and he says hi, by the way. Awesome. I went by his office today for the first time in a couple of months because we like to try to meet up every now and then and catch up and see how things are going. And so today was that day.
Great.
To do that. Yeah, it's very nice. He showed me, all the stuff he's working on. I show him what I'm working on, and we both teach each other sort of new tricks that we learned in ZBrush because it's a giant program with so many neat intricacies. But yeah, so, and the other tough part is making everything castable. So again, with when you think like belt straps that go across chests and stuff, when it comes to a game asset, it's like its own thing, and it's supposed to kind of float up a little bit so that they can animate and do whatever with it in game. But for this, you got to make it thick. You know, you got to make it penetrate through wherever it's going to be, because if not, then you won't be able to tell it's even there.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I have a good example with this guy. I don't know, it might be kind of hard to tell, but the belt straps that are around his backside, they don't come out enough. They look really smooth, sort of against his cloth. And so that's been a really tough thing just to mentally think about, you know? Mm-hmm. So instead of, say, if I want to make a belt, now I'll just pull out a giant cylinder. So it has no hole on the inside or anything, and just kind of stick it in there, because it's easier to give it that dimension. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might not be saying it correctly. I'm really bad with.
Well, I understand it, and I think that's a really cool thing to bring up, is what you were saying about versus game assets versus sculpting miniatures, and how it's very, like, there's a lot of benefits working digitally, but you have to be a little more mindful of other things with that. You know, you can't just, you know, with a traditional miniature, you put a little piece of putty on, and, you know, if it's my chest here, this chest is cured, or it's another material. You can't put anything inside it, so it's going to touch. You know, it's going to be flush where it needs to be flush. But with digital, you have to do little tricks like that. Like, rather than just taking a strip and setting it on it, you can't. You know, you don't want to do that, because then you can have all these little gaps underneath. But if you use a solid shape and just slide it into the body and just let protrude what you want to see, you all of a sudden worked it all out.
Yeah,
so that's great.
So that's what I try to do for my gauntlets and belts and boots, any article of clothing, really, because, you know, they can't be thin and dainty. But yeah.
Well, that's what I've been really impressed with your work, and maybe you could tell us real quick, like, how many, do you know off the top of your head how many miniatures you've sculpted so far? Whether, I mean, ones that you would consider complete. I mean, we all have a few early ones that maybe we don't count, but you can count those too if you want.
I've done, here, I have a lot. Well, not a lot, but to me, a fair amount. For Reaper, I have done about 13, and you know, not many of them have been printed yet, because, you know, they're saving it for stuff. And then for the Rodmans at RBJ, man, including even the small stuff, oh goodness, I'd say maybe around 20, if not more. I
guess maybe this would have been a better question to ask first. How long have you been at this? Because in my perspective, it seems like it's not been that long.
Right. It is since January of last year.
Okay, so barely over a year.
Right. And I count that because that's when I met up with Bobby on New Year's.
Gotcha.
And within that month, he got me in contact with Ron. So I guess officially I should say around last June or July. So
that's since you've been doing professional work, but
yeah, then that would be less than a year.
Yeah, but that's that's why I was so impressed when I saw your stuff, and yeah, you just come very far very quickly and really seem to grasp how to get the miniature look. You know what I mean? And not even the look, just making it so it works in miniature.
Yeah.
And I love your style. I love your style.
Thanks.
It reminds me of Bobby's, but I can tell it's different. It's, you know, you have your own style going.
That was the thing. I started. Yeah, I didn't even think about head proportions, and that was the thing. I kept doing 8 heads tall, and Bobby would look at it and be like, "Something's off," and you know, I wouldn't tell him that it was my head proportions, and then he'd look at it, and then we started he just started noticing more, and I'd start a new project while at his office, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's what it is. Your guys are too tall, or your head is too small. You need to." So, and he's helped me. He's given me some ZBrush assets as well. Not anything real big, just little base guys to start off of, just so that I can save 15 minutes on a basic shape, a human shape and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Bobby's style it's great. It's fantastic. It always looks super good. And I watched a video today about things that artists struggle with, and one of the cheap things it said was to not steal from one person though, but steal from a group of people, so that way your stuff looks original. And I was like, I guess that could be how it works, I suppose.
Well, that sounds. Oh, go ahead.
I was just because I normally speak, or it's been a couple of months, but normally Bobby, Chris Lewis, and Gene Van Horn all get in a little chat room, and they all kind of discuss things and share things with one another. And they've invited me a couple of times to hang out with them, and it's been great. And that's one of the things I really love about the miniature community so far is nobody is ever out for blood. Everyone is just like, "Oh man, you're having this problem? Let me help you." I feel like in any other industry, they're like, "Oh, you're having a problem? Well, it's a good thing." Don't want to take the business away from me. But everybody, is sharing and open, and they just want the community to thrive. It's awesome. I'm really proud to be part of it so far.
Yep, that's my favorite part about it too. Everybody's super generous.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby was actually the first person I met. Bobby and Gene. I sat next to them at the first time I went to a sculptors meeting at Gen Con. So, yeah, you're very lucky, and yeah, great people.
Yeah, and Gene is also wickedly talented in sculpting and in traditional art. Those little mouselings, that he keeps doing for Reaper.
That's right.
Yeah, a perfect style on his own too. And I actually started kind of developing more of a style with the latest work that I've been doing for the Rodmans, because they've given me a lot of freedom. They haven't given me any concept art. And I just wanted to try something new. And since miniatures are already sort of crazy proportions and stuff, I've been really trying to take it to the extreme, trying to make different jaw sizes and make the head smaller, make the nose, even smaller, and making just the traps super huge and everything else, the normal size. Just trying to kind of squish and squash shapes and try to come up with more unique silhouettes and stuff like that. All the fancy stuff they teach you in art school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've actually touched on this a little bit. Maybe you can continue on. Tell us a little about some of your influences. Sculptors that have inspired you. We've already talked about several that have helped you, but maybe other artists, just traditional illustrators or things like that.
Well, for traditional illustrators, it'll be the guy who did all the Akira books. I don't know if you've ever read those.
I have read some. I don't know his name either, though.
I'm not really big into manga, but those books are fantastic and amazing. And the art style, it's like so simple, but I mean, you can just tell it's so complex and well thought out. Every single line has just been placed perfectly. So for 2D, it's definitely that. And oh goodness, I know I should have thought about that. But miniature sculpting wise, Jason Wiebe is Derek Schubert, all the yourself as well, doing the stuff for RBJ. And,
thanks.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I have to say I'm also a really big fan of you, and I'm very psyched to be on this. Was not expecting. It's pretty awesome because I've been a fan of the YouTube channel for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, when I first started this, about a year ago. I was looking on YouTube for a bunch of, because everyone has ZBrush tutorials for game asset stuff, but not straight up just kind of miniatures. So I found Sean Sutter with the Relic Blade stuff, and then I found your stuff. Even though yours wasn't quite ZBrush, but it still had traditional and that sculpting stuff, because I was trying to find insight on how to get the proportions and what needs to be exaggerated and not. And so I got, looking at your sculpting mini show, just doing research.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny how we all end up finding each other in this little industry.
Yeah. And I think for whenever I try to do big muscly guys, Trey Maynor is definitely really top notch on that. And also, some of those Kingdom Death miniatures are real cool. I like the monsters. I like doing big ugly things. I find that to be the easiest and less stress inducing. Animals and females that are supposed to be really pretty, those stress me out.
Yeah, you have to be so subtle with everything.
It is, yeah. I guess I'm just not talented enough to do the gracefulness that needs to. But if it's supposed to be a big old ugly woman, like a big old ugly witch, I could do that, definitely.
I'm sure you could do the you just need the practice.
I've done a couple for Reaper, and I was stressing myself out too hard. I was just like, this face just doesn't look right. It just looks manly. I don't know what it is.
Awesome.
Always something. And then, well, there's, of course, traditional artists like Rembrandt's, just drawings. Because I mostly draw people a lot. That was what I drew through high school, through college. I was all about life drawings and go into cafes or whatever with a little notebook and a pencil and just kind of drawing from life. And so people and all that I'm really into. I'm actually really obsessed with muscle groups, and my wife, who is in school for being a nurse practitioner, she always tells me, she's like, in a second life, maybe you could have been the doctor of whatever doctor for muscles is. I forget. But I mean, I study. That is the only thing I still study, because I'm tired of school, ZBrush and anatomy books. Those are my two things.
Are you pretty aware of the muscle group names?
The big ones.
I don't know any of them. I was teaching sculpting classes recently, and I was tripping all over myself trying to just tell them what muscle groups and stuff. So no judgment for me, sir.
I'm just obsessed with the way they connect.
Yeah, You don't need to know the names to understand how it all works. Yeah. Well, I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about your process. I was digging around, looking at your ArtStation, some other stuff, and you have some nice images showing how you the final thing, and kind of how you maybe talk about that some. And I might interject a little question here and there.
Sure, I have. So sometimes I'll have concept art, and then sometimes I won't. And so if I don't,
do you prefer concept art, or are you cool either way? Have you not developed one preference or another?
I like both, because sometimes I just can't think of how armor should look, or how what accessories the thing should have. So I really, really appreciate concept art, especially if it's done by Izzy at Reaper, because I got to hang out with her. That was so awesome. That was great. She's awesome. Getting to hang out with her, and you know what? Yeah, she's a big influence on my 2D art, for real. Because she is mind-blowing. Like, we're just sitting there, and then she just comes up with this crazy, awesome idea. And, you know, she doesn't really do that many guidelines when it comes to blocking out her body or anything. She's just able to just kind of, it's like a scanner almost. I don't know. It's just like, it was awesome. But, so, if I don't have concept art, though, I'll just kind of do really quick gestural sketches of just like a pose that I think, or something that'll help me kind of feel the attitude of a character, which I think is really, really important, or else they'll just, you know, and because I could sketch in ZBrush, but I feel like that's just unnecessary time when I can, you know, in less than 30 minutes, I can sketch out more of what I have in my head. So, what do you feel about concept art or not?
Yeah, I like it. It can be very well. Okay, well, I guess I'll say this. I always prefer to have some sort of drawing, whether somebody else gave it to me or I did it myself, whether it's super tight or whether it's rough, because when I'm trying to work out all the details, like you were saying, you know, especially with ZBrush, you can sketch out a lot of stuff and you can do it really easily, but it feels like it takes longer to just noodle around. I don't know. I prefer to work it on a paper, so I do prefer it myself. But with that said, I actually have really started to enjoy doing more of the design myself, you know, coming up with the look and an idea, not just trying to emulate somebody else's work.
Hold on,
but you don't have to copy their style exactly.
Right. Hold on one moment. My cat is trying to get in. The litter box is in.
Gotcha. All right. No problem. We'll chop.
Come on. Cedric. Come on. Okay. All right. And then I'll close that door once he's done. Sorry.
No problem.
Got 2 dogs, a cat, and, you know, Animal Central. But yeah, when I get concept art, sometimes it turns more into a problem solving. It feels like I get to work out another part of my creative brain process, and it'll be like, okay, I have these shapes. Now, how can I make these shapes in ZBrush? And what is the quickest way and the best way to make it look good and still get the shape and the overall attitude of the character? Because one of the other first thing that I did for Reaper, it's actually now finally on the store. I did a first iteration of her, and she is this elf paladin, and she's got all this armor. And so I thought, okay, well, she's got heavy armor. I'm going to bulk her up. She's going to look a little bulky. And then when I sent it to the art director, he was like, oh, man, she looks great, but she is way too bulky. She needs to come down a lot. And this was, gosh, I felt like I was near the very last step. And I was like, oh, man, I have to redo so much work now. But it ended up being a semi-easy fix, and it wasn't too bad. And now I think she looks pretty good, closer to the concept art, which is good. So
awesome. Yeah, I remember seeing that figure. I checked it out. Yeah, so we'll post it up here so everybody can see it.
Sure.
It turned out really well, man.
Thanks. That's like my first official one. That was my first official professional sculpt. So it's got a lot of problems. I've learned so much since then. But, you know, it is what it is now. It's out. I like it. Yeah, everyone's critical of their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think a good thing that I try to do and utilize is whenever I do get criticism or feedback, I try to I don't get down on myself, because I need criticism and feedback, and I strive on it. I love it when an art director tells me what all is wrong with it, because I mean, you know, all I do is stare at it for 10 hours a day. And it's always good to see another pair of eyes and tell me what's wrong with it and fix it. I love it. That's how I learn, you know?
Yeah, that's how we all learn.
Yeah. And I attribute that to, I guess, the progress that I've been able to make within this past year. Is all the really good criticism from different art directors. Because I think I've worked with 3 or 4 companies at this point, and with RBJ, Reaper, and then 2 other guys. And I mean, they've all just been on point with their criticism. It's great.
Well, let's keep going down the track of your process. So you got your concept art.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how do you start in ZBrush? Yeah, just kind of walk us through it.
I have made, whenever I had downtime between projects, I have made template bodies, different builds, male and female. But really, I could just use either my base male or female, and then just kind of bulk up where I need to bulk up, because I have a lot of fun sculpting muscles. So I try to get all the muscle work done so that I'm not too tempted to just spend 3 hours on refining all these muscles that are just going to be covered up by armor and stuff anyway. So I've made those, and then
so are your dollies, your starter bodies, are they pretty rough, or do you, like you said with the muscles, are they pretty well defined just so you have them and it's ready to go like that? Or is that something you're doing afterwards, after you pose them up? Or
yeah, they are pretty defined, but I have them, you know, in ZBrush you can have something at a really, really low polygonal level, and you know, and you can also divide it to where there's several different subdivision levels. So I'll have it at high res when I load it in, but then I can, you know, switch it down to low res, and I'm able to move the body real easily without distorting too much. But sometimes if the pose gets too extreme and I can't move my arm and it ends up dragging everything else, I'll just chop the arm off, place it where I need to, and then kind of fix and fill the holes in when I do that. So lately I've been tending to pose it pretty early. It's pretty much my 3rd or 4th step. I'll load in the body, then I'll load in just a base head, and I use the same head for all my males, and I'm able to really get unique, you know, facial structures just by pushing and pulling, because I'll keep it at a really low subdivision level. And that's where I try to find the character a lot. That's where I try to make the angry face, you know, try to see what his expression is going to be, or if it's going to be covered up with a beard or not. And then once I get the head down, I'll put certain articles of clothing on, maybe, depending on A, if they have them, B, if I need it for symmetry reasons. So pretty much anything that'll be on the chest or waist, like belts and certain pants and whatnot. But sometimes it's just more hassle and more work if he's already clothed, he or she is already clothed, and then I have to pose him. So I'll typically pose them after I put a couple of armor things on. Also to just kind of send a quick turnaround as fast as I can to the art directors, just saying, before I put an amazing amount of time of work into a pose, and because this has happened to me, where I put a long hours into posing and getting certain articles of clothing right, and then I send it to them, and they're like, oh, well, we don't like that at all. And then you're just like, well, dang. I don't know what that stinks.
I've been there myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
get them to sign off on that as soon as possible.
Right, yeah. So I try to jot down a quick pose, and I'm like, you know, you judge it kindly. It's going to look like crap until the last 5%. That's what I try to tell them. It's, it's just going to look blobbly and, putty-like and, no real definition or shape at that point. Mm-hmm. But then once I get the go-ahead, yes, the overall silhouette and shape is fine, go ahead. Then I block out more things like wrist, armor, weapons, all that stuff. And then once I get it blocked out, then I put the final details on it. And then before I do my Dynameshing, which a process that we need to do, of course, is make sure it's watertight. And when you have, a million subtools and you collapse them all together, you got to make sure that there are absolutely no holes so that the mold doesn't get messed up or any of that. So that step. And then if it needs to be cut, I think I do it during that. I don't know. That's what I call, it starts to get into the technical mode. After the art mode is done, I spend, it feels like almost half as much time on just getting the technical stuff ready, doing the Dynameshing, doing my cuts and making sure that everything can fit correctly. Because sometimes, they don't tell you until the very end, okay, well, we're going to need to cut them here and here. And that's the thing that I need to learn more about, the mold making process itself. Mm-hmm. So that way I can kind of help myself out in time when it comes to cutting it up. Because I've ran into some problems before, and and then I end up regretting it. I'm like, man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have.
That'll be
think of a specific thing right now.
That'll be a great tool to have in your arsenal as you continue working for people too, because as you freelance for more people, you'll start to realize that you know a lot more than who's hiring you. Unless you're working for Reaper or some of the other people that have been around for a long time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about how casting, unless you're the Rodmans and they're able to make miracles out of fast, they say. So.
Are you do you use Dynamesh pretty sparingly?
I try to keep everything really low res as long as I can, so that I can, so that it doesn't look lumpy. That was a problem with some of my first stuff. Everything kept looking really lumpy because I was using high density Dynamesh models, and they just looked real lumpy. They just didn't look good to me. But now that it's getting better.
So sorry to keep needling this, but I just have to know for myself.
Oh, that's all
right. So do you if you're using Dynamesh, you just keep it really low, or you try and forego using it and just use basic subdivision levels and maybe up it a little bit if you need it, or keep it down low? Does that make sense? I'm sure it makes sense to you. Hopefully it makes sense to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will Dynamesh to get a weird, like if I need a weird shape for a piece of armor or something, I'll try to Dynamesh that, and then I'll do the ZRemesher, and I'll try to, this is just to make all my hard lines look hard, instead of, because nobody wants plate armor that looks like cloth or anything. It's all rounded at the edges and stuff. So then I'll do that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. Well, just and correct me if I'm wrong, just for everybody at home, ZRemesher is a tool where it kind of re-topologizes the shape to make it kind of flow better and match the contours that you have going on. But you can use it to reduce the number of polygons, so that way you don't have a bunch of, just like with Dynamesh, it just puts on evenly spaced squares. This can help create a much nicer flow that can let you manipulate the shape better.
And that's what I did for my my base bodies that are in the T-pose.
Gotcha.
I sculpted all those in high definition Dynamesh, really high topology, and then I duplicated that so that I had, all right, so now I have two versions of the body, and they're both high polygon count. And then on the duplicate one, I kept doing ZRemesher half. Just keep going until I have under 1,000 polygons, which is not a lot at all. And then it shouldn't have moved too much. And then I will project it. If you keep both the layers viewable, then you can project the detail from the high level one to the low level one. And then you start dividing, subdividing. Yeah, you keep dividing your polygons up and keep projecting it. So now you have that high definition one projected on multiple subdivision levels on your lower one, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me because I know what you're talking about. It's done. Yeah, I thought you explained it well, but it is hard.
Okay. I know ZBrush stuff can be really confusing to people, so
yeah.
And it's confusing to me too, still.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's so much in there, and there's so many different ways. Actually, which when you were talking about your body, I realized it sounded like is your body basically one mesh, or you don't like do a block for this, and then have them all separate shapes that get moved around. You have it all meshed together.
Right. And then if I'm not happy with posing my guy or girl when they're low subdivision, then like I said, I will just chop it off and I'll make it a separate thing. In fact, on some of the new stuff that I've been working on, there was a whole arm that I just completely tossed it to the side. I made a new shoulder by just making a sphere because I wanted it to look kind of bubbly, I guess is the term. I wanted his muscles to look bubbly. And so I gave him, insert sphere, made a big sphere, and then I pulled out another sphere, and then I made the bicep out of that, and then 2 more spheres to make the tricep on the back. And his arm was bended, and whenever you try to just use the regular geometry to bend the arm, you get all sorts of weird artifacts and weird things pop out everywhere, and I didn't want that. So then I just inserted another sphere and made the forearm out of that. So I really, this is what Bobby likes to say. He likes to use the insert spheres like magic clay. And that's what he says Dynamesh is. Dynamesh is magic clay that you can just kind of move around and make any shape and then retopologize it and then smooth it out. And it's a whole new sort of thing. And so most of the time I like to just kind of insert sphere, chop it up, sculpt it by hand, and then place it where I want it to, like with bags or pouches, or shoulder armor or anything like that.
That's very encouraging to hear, especially coming from somebody who has training in, the game industry, if you will, or even more traditional digital sculpting techniques, that where you're finding it's easier to just not worry about symmetry as much.
Yeah.
Just make your pose and sculpt what you need to have. It's very cool.
Yeah, because what Bobby has told me, he says he tries to make his digital sculpts look like they were made by hand instead of in a computer. So that's where I learned the whole don't worry about symmetry as much.
Right.
In fact, you said that on your your 100 Days of Minis.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, it's still so hard to want to not to break off of that, but I'm gonna have to force myself to do it. Otherwise, I'll be there forever.
Exactly. It is true. Sculpting from putty and stuff, you don't have symmetry, but they still look like faces. All these that I have over here on my little shelf, all those faces look symmetrical, even though I know they're sculpted by hand.
Yeah.
So,
So what projects are you? Or sorry, do you have anything else to say about your process?
No, I mean it just I'll either turn on a podcast or listen to some music on my iTunes and just kind of go with it and lose a lot of track of time because sometimes I just get so sucked into it. And then some days I just hit a roadblock and I can't do anything about it. And when I come to that situation, for instance, lately the projects that I've been working on, they'll say, okay, I need these 4 things. So I'll work on one guy at a time, but I'll work until my artistic part is done. Going back again to the artistic part and then the technical part, which is making it all together and splitting it up. I'll just get to just before that, and I'll get the final say from the art director, and then they'll say, okay, cool, that one looks great. And then I'll go, all right, now before I give him to you the STL file, I'm going to work on these other guys. And the reason I do that is because it'll give me some time to not look at that first guy for a while. Because sometimes it can take a week or two to get all, if you get 4 or 5 guys, it can take a while to get those done. So by the time I'm done with everybody and I'm ready to do all the technical stuff, I can go back and look at my first guy with pretty much a fresh new pair of eyes. And I get to kind of critique myself and see, okay, I can do this. I can change this a little bit. I'm going to need to fill under that. And so that's another part of the process, I'd say, for me.
A couple questions here. There are some real life, some in the digital realm. What are you using to sculpt with? Obviously, we said ZBrush, but what's your setup? And within ZBrush, do you have any favorite tools that you like to use? That you kind of go to, or like a basic set?
Sure, I can show my little workstation. It looks a little messy right now, but I'm using my Mac that I always use. And other than my Mac, I connect it to a monitor, and I use just a Wacom tablet. And that is pretty much it. My desk space is a little messy right now, but that is it. I would love to be able to get me one of those fancy, nice, awesome Cintiqs. That's like a giant screen. But I mean, I've been using this since I started, and really, it's not the worst thing in the world. There was a disconnect when I first started, but now it's just an everyday thing. So, yeah, and it's awesome, and I love having 2 monitors at least to look at. One for I normally keep all my concept art or YouTube or whatever on this one, and then over here is my main monitor where I do most of my ZBrush stuff. And I need to invest in a bigger monitor. I do need something bigger.
Really? So, are you sure? I mean, these things are just going to be super tiny. How big does the monitor need to be?
I know.
It is a weird deception, though, isn't it?
That is
a
hard part. That is a really hard part because you are able to zoom in so close, and then you end up spending this time on super close, and then you pull it out, and you're like, it doesn't matter. You can sort of cheat the detail when they're at that small. But I have been doing a lot of bigger guys lately, a lot bigger guys. So I've been able to kind of do my fun detail stuff. And my favorite tools on ZBrush, I mean, I mostly just use the Move Topological, the Clay Buildup, and Orb Cracks.
Love that brush.
Orb, it's a free brush set. There's a whole ton of them, and that's what they're kind of stylized brush sets too. They're sort of they're created from a guy who worked at Blizzard, or he still works at Blizzard. So it has that sort of art style that, you know, you're able to kind of cheat. Because I like the damn standard, but I've been having a lot of problems with it, and I find the orb crack brush to be way better. And then, you know, just inflate in ZModeler as well, which is, I struggle with it, even though I shouldn't, because
it's like a whole other program.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is before I started using ZBrush, I worked in a program called Maya, which is the old-fashioned way of making digital characters. You know, you pull a vert one by one by one, you extrude. It is a slow process. So I should know how to use ZModeler better, but you know, sometimes I'm just not as good with it. Chris Lewis is great with ZModeler.
Yeah, he is.
The UVs.
I need him on here.
His technique is crazy because he actually does all his sculpting in Photoshop.
Whoa, I'm gonna have to ask him about that. That's crazy.
He's trying to tell us about it at ReaperCon. He UVs all his stuff, and then he goes into Photoshops and uses values of black and white to, you know,
wow.
Yeah, like white is either raised. I think pure white is the highest point, and then of course black is the lowest point, and any gray in between, it gives you your different levels. It is crazy. It's a really cool technique. Just a lot more technical stuff to it. Which, you know, and it's funny though. He was trying to teach all the guys at ReaperCon, Weeby, me, Gene, Bobby, and you know, it was like we were all in school again. Everybody had their notes, asking the questions, because he's perfected it. And he's done a lot of Reaper stuff with it too, but you can't tell. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, where are we?
Well, I kind of jumped all over the place.
That's all right.
I was going to ask you a little bit. So you've worked for Reaper, you worked for RBJ, and a couple other guys. Sounds like maybe you can't talk about that yet, though.
Maybe.
Well, it's up to you. What's been your favorite sculpt that you've done so far?
I've done a couple. Lately, Joe Cool for the Rodmans.
Yes, awesome. Is he a frost giant? Is that what he is?
He is.
Some sort of
Yeah,
giant.
I think he's a big Norse frost thing. Him, and then a really big guy for Reaper. I don't know if I can say.
All right. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for that one, though.
Yeah. He took a while. He took almost a full month to work on.
Wow.
He was, and I love big monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Big old ugly guys. So anytime I get to work on a monster, I love it. It seems to go by really quick, and I can get those guys done super, super quick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. They're just, you know, just putting veins and rocks and just dirty them up. You know, it's just so easy just to fill it up with grotesque sort of things, which is why I really enjoy those Kingdom Death monster.
Yeah, they're very interesting.
Sculpts. Yeah.
So what are some upcoming projects that are coming out soon that you can tell us about that you've worked on?
Well, I do have the Significant 7 coming up for RBJ, which
very excited about those, especially that Barbarian. They're all very cool, but I love what you did.
It's sort of like a twist on Snow White, I suppose, because there's 7 dwarves, and then there's a Snow Queen as well.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That's cool.
Yeah, and there was talks of doing a little bit more with that as well, but I haven't heard. So that might be that either somebody else is working on it, but I hope they do it because it sounded really cool. It sounded really, really neat. Yeah, there has been a guy who I've been following on Instagram who has been painting them, and he is making them look even better than the sculpts.
Is that Malevolent Minis?
Yes, and it's really special to me because this is like the first time I'm seeing my stuff professionally painted. So it's like, I don't know, it's just been a lot of hard work and time, and it's just really, really cool to see it. Makes me feel, I keep showing it off to my wife, and every time he posts something new, it's like, look, 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 there. So, and that's also another thing that I've been trying to struggle with is, what does a painter want?
Yeah.
Do they like textured stuff, or do they like it more smooth? Of course, when I asked people that at ReaperCon, I got conflicting. You know, some people like to paint every detail, and then some people are like, well, you know, I get to cheat a little bit if there's all sorts of fur texture on it and stuff. So I still have no answer for that, and I wish I did, because I just want to know what's easier. Well, I guess not easier, but what looks better in the end. Because I paint a little bit, not professional at all. Just some D&D guys for my brothers and I D&D campaign, with just some Reaper paints and just any spare time. Because I used to paint World War II miniatures with my stepdad growing up. Mostly airplanes, actually. The 172 Tamiya scaled stuff that was in, you know, all the hobby stores and stuff. But I didn't know about any techniques, so I thought they probably looked like hot garbage. But because I learned about washing like a couple of years ago when my tabletop gaming friends were telling me about painting, and they're like, "Oh, you've never used a wash before?" Because I was like, "Man, how did they get the nice deep shadows in all those crevices?" And I'm like, "Oh, man, come on, that's like painting 101." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." Who knows?
Now it's hard to pick up those techniques without the community. Which, speaking of which, so you know, you're very new to this industry. You're a younger guy. You know, the industry used to be, well, obviously there wasn't as much with the internet and everything, so people we'd kind of gather and find each other through the convention scene. It sounds like you've got a little bit of that going on, especially because you already knew Bobby. Are you going about, you know, getting yourself out there and finding these jobs? Do you still find it's a lot of word of mouth, or any suggestions for anybody that's trying to start putting themselves out there, especially in this newer world?
Yeah, I've mostly gotten just recommendations from Bobby. You know, somebody will come with him. Hey, I got a project, and he'll say, hey, why don't you try, you know, and he'll give them my name, and then, you know, pretty much everybody who is coming to me, I feel like, not to put me down, but as you know, putting a lot on the line. You know, they're risking themselves. You know, oh, this is a new sculptor. You know, who knows if he can deliver on the product and do this or do that. You know, so yeah, it is some of that word of mouth. I am putting all my stuff on Instagram and ArtStation and Facebook, and I've done a couple of sculpts for some local friends of mine who have just kind of, you know, seen the stuff. But, you know, that kind of stuff is always just right time at right place kind of luck. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and everybody always wants the magic bullet, and things are changing. You know, there's more with the internet and social media, but it seems like it always comes down back to networking and being out there available and meeting other people that are doing what you want to do. And like you said, this great group, this great industry where people are helping each other and just really inviting. That's really good to hear. that's been your experience as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially at ReaperCon, because that was my first. That was my first forte into all of it, and I met so many painters and so many sculptors, and it was just nice and warm and inviting, and and that really motivated me a lot to be like, all right, I need to do more stuff. I need to be in this industry. I need to, because I'm not bloodthirsty. I don't want to own the world with it. I just want to be part of it, and I just want to produce really cool stuff that people are like, hey,
well, you are already.
Oh, thanks. And eventually maybe it would be cool to kind of push out, if I could ever sit down and just actually think of multiple things to sculpt, push out my own little guise of, I don't know. Everybody's got little stories that they always have jotted down, stuff like that, I started to do some ogres or orcs, but then, then you get hit with work, and which is not a bad thing at all. But, then you just got to put it on the back burner for a little bit, and then, but that'll give me more time to flesh out and think of what I would like to kind of produce. So.
Awesome. So you said you're on Facebook. Everybody should go there and follow you there. Look you up on ArtStation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I should probably make like a business page Facebook, I guess, because it's just my personal one, which is fun.
I don't know. I don't know the right way to do it either. Don't ask me. I just let everybody friend me because I still can't quite figure out all of Facebook.
I mean, I don't post any controversial things on my Facebook ever because I don't care about.
I think miniatures are cooler.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just there just to show off the stuff I'm doing, not to complain or react to world stuff. My page is just supposed to be just check this stuff out. Except for when I get photos taken at family stuff and from my wife or whatever. Because I have like over 1,000 pictures on Facebook, because there's this period.
Oh, wow.
There's this period. Because my wife and I, well, we've been together for 10 years. We got married in 2015. And her friend and her, when they went to college, they just constantly had a camera with them. And, I would go and visit, and, we'd all hang out, and there was just hundreds of photos just taken in a weekend. And then out of those hundreds of photos, some get posted up. So I have a ton of just old, too many photos. Too many. Which is why I'm saying I think I might need to make a business page.
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, and also on Instagram, I've been posting stuff mostly there, and I do want to get my ArtStation up, and because I have a website, but I'm not really too happy with it. And with ArtStation, you can I can pay as much as I'm paying for my website now, and ArtStation will just sort of convert that into a website.
That's cool.
So yeah, I might just do that. Who knows? Once I get more, because I have, like I said, I've done a ton of sculpts for Reaper and stuff, but I don't know what to put out to the world yet. Just out of respect.
Right.
Just because I have so much respect for all those guys, and even though I technically did them, it's technically theirs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you want to give them the chance to have the glory of it, or the pomp and circumstance of the release.
Yeah, exactly.
Foil any of that.
Mm-hmm. I do notice in Kickstarters a lot. I notice in Kickstarters a lot of people don't ever credit their sculptors.
Yeah, that's a sad, unfortunate trend that seems to be building up.
Well, it's not like
backslide.
I just want to know who did it, because I want to see their other stuff. I see all these beautiful works on Kickstarter, and yeah.
Well, there you go, everybody. As you do work, it's up to you. I mean, companies don't have to put your name on there, but if you don't ask, they might not be doing might not be doing it on purpose. They might just not be thinking about it.
Right.
So ask. Yeah. Because that is another good way. Then you don't have to have word of mouth from, a small community. You can have word of mouth from people just seeing your name on a product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Maliv, he gave me a shout out, which was pretty nice of him because he's got a ton of followers on Instagram.
He built that up.
Yeah, I know. I mostly just have all my close friends from in town. So, well, I have like 300 on Instagram, but that's all from high school to college to now. Mm-hmm. And so him giving me that shout out was really nice and really cool. Help expose. Because you never know who's watching.
That's right. And I'll put all of your social media things and your websites in the description here. So everybody go follow Tim on Instagram, friend him on Facebook, or find his pro page if he gets that up before this video goes up. And you check out all his work on those places. So Tim, if anybody wants to hire you, what's the best way? How would you prefer to be contacted?
I guess just my email.
Okay.
Simple. Timothy G. Hill @gmail.com. If anybody can guess my middle name, it's sort of like Rumpelstiltskin. They could get a reward.
I like that.
If I told you what it was, you wouldn't believe it. So.
Man, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
But we will save it. We won't do that on here. We won't reveal it here. You have to guess. We'll give that secret away.
If somebody can guess it. It's really not fair because it's really not a traditional name. It starts with a G and ends with an S. It's a family name, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Our question for you to speak, and I just thought of it. It's not in our original outline, but I've been getting it a lot recently. So I'm pretty sure I know the answer. You are not a full-time sculptor. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
So, I guess you don't have to say, but if you want to share, what do you do, and do you want to be a full-time sculptor? What do you do in your day job at the moment?
Yes, I would love to be a full-time sculptor. Right now, I work part-time at Realty South, which is a real estate company. I work at the front desk, work with the office crew. There's only 3 or 4 of us. Just help the real estate agents with their paperwork. And actually, well, because I'm the young guy, I help with their graphics and IT, help them around because most of the agents they didn't grow up with technology or anything, so they have computer problems a bit. And, some of them didn't even know how to make a folder on and organize their stuff, which is one of the things I learned at Full Sail was file organization, which has helped me a lot with this.
I bet.
So, but yeah, they are awesome. I only work from like 9 to 2, Monday through Friday. And then if I need days off to work on this, they're totally cool with doing that. Because before I worked there, I did take a month or 2 off to try this full time. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. It was awesome. But, the problem with the freelance life is you're waiting and, you wait on checks sometimes.
Well, you're building up that repertoire, and it gets easier
exactly.
The more you have under your belt, I think.
Bobby told me it took him 10 years to quit his day job.
That's crazy. I actually only recently found out that when I met him, he wasn't full-time sculpting still. I thought he'd been that way for his whole life, except for when he was in the Army. Especially all those legends like Bob Rodolphe and Julie Guthrie, who are also one of the nicest people I've ever met. And they're awesome.
Like I said, it's just a great community. They're just all awesome. And, just try to contact and just say hey to people. Like Sean Sutter, I got his email, and I was just saying, hey, just want to introduce myself, you know. And they, you know, what's the worst thing that's going to happen is they won't respond to your email, or they'll say, you know, yeah, that'll be the worst thing, because you're all super nice and they'll still respond to you, you know. So
my experience too. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, too, that your job will let you have that extra time, because I know sometimes you're working on a project and you just need to get it done and over with, and it stinks to have to go to work. You need that day off to work on miniatures,
Yeah,
and get it out of your system. So
yeah,
and complete the task.
because normally when I tell people, I mean, it takes them a second to sort of register what it is, because, you know, I do this thing on the side, and they're like, oh, what's your other job? And I'm like, well, you know, I'll sculpt miniatures in 3D. And then, you know, I have to explain it a little bit. But then once they get it, they're like, oh my, that's so cool and unique. And so I guess they're just sort of like, sure, we'll let him off. We'll let him do that cool, unique thing while he still can, you know. So, yes, but being full-time would be awesome. I would love, though, if I could get a little office. Because working from home is great, but it's also, it can just be distracting, especially with dogs. Just want to either play with my dogs, or, you know, I'll be sculpting and then I'll get up to get a glass of water and I'll be like, oh my God, this kitchen, it's terrible looking. What is going on?
Oh, yeah.
Then I'm spending 30 minutes to an hour cleaning up the house instead of sculpting, you know?
Yeah. Well, if there's any companies or people out there that need miniatures, get in touch with Tim. Let's see if we can help him go full-time sooner than later. Or at least get him a lot more work, so you can, because he is an amazing sculptor. And I mean, if you have come this far in this short of time, and obviously you were an artist before this, which I'm sure has helped, but you really figured this thing out, in my opinion. And I'm really excited to see where you get just in the next, you know, 5 years. You're going to be an easy old hat at all this. And
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a struggle too, because I was never really comfortable with selling my art. So selling myself to sculpt has been a very difficult thing for me, especially since I love it. I shouldn't say this, but I feel bad for charging. I shouldn't, because it's a job. But, you know, it's just like I love it so much. It's just so much fun. And it's like, because that's the thing with Bobby. It's like, you need to learn to sell yourself, and don't sell yourself short ever. You know, you do your thing, you get paid for it. That is the ultimate goal. Yes, it's fun and the community is great, but, you know, if you can't survive and live, then you can't do it. So,
good advice.
Yeah, it really was, because I'd never even sold a drawing before that. So, and I had friends who were like, man, I'll pay $50 for that. I'm like, man, no. I loved it. I had fun doing it. It didn't take me that long. Why would I do that? And now I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Got to pay the bills. Yeah.
Well, Tim, this has been really great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. But before we go, is there anything else you want to talk about? It's a very open-ended question, but if there's anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to bring up, well, let's do it.
I'm sure I'll think of something tomorrow. You know,
probably. Me too.
I'll be laying at bed like, man, that was a great interview. That's what I should have said.
We'll just have to do a follow-up hangout then.
Say what?
We'll just have to do a follow-up hangout then.
Yeah, we should. I am totally down. You know, I'm always down to hang out, do some sculpting.
Awesome.
Well, hopefully, yeah, I'll run that you at a con or something. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great. I look forward to meeting you in person for sure.
Yeah. Maybe I can save up for Gen Con or Adepticon next year.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
You will love Adepticon. It's a lot of fun. A lot of miniatures. You'd love Gen Con too. Yeah, but it's very busy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Hopefully, I'd like to get down to ReaperCon, so maybe that'll.
Yes. 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 Or, Magic City Con, the real big one.
Oh, I've not heard of that one.
It's not. It's
Cool. Is that your
it's
local
very
con?
local. Yeah, it's a very local con. But I made some contacts there too. I guess that's something I could say. If you are wanting to get into sculpting, I think the most important thing is to just network and go to cons, sculpt some things. Don't be too afraid to show off your stuff, and let people critique it, because that's how you improve, and that's how you learn, and that's how you're going to get better, is critiquing, honest feedback, constructive criticism.
Yes. Perfect.
And like I said, when we don't go live, I'll tell you my middle name, my secret.
Oh, sweet. Okay, we're getting off this right now, guys. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Tim. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah.
Hope everybody else. So, okay. See you later.
See you.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about Tim's journey in miniature sculpting as much as I did talking to him about it. Tim is so down to earth and so humble and willing to learn, and I think that is one of the key factors that's enabled him to come as far as he has, as quickly as he has. And I hope that's a big inspiration to all of you as well, whether you're going to do traditional sculpting, digital sculpting, miniatures, or big stuff. It's a valuable lesson of everything he said. The thing that resonated to me the most was being able to listen to feedback and take it and apply it to your work so that you can get better. Don't get discouraged. Just let it wash over you and work on it to do better next time. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and keep sculpting.